There's someone in your life right now, and they make you feel chosen. Special, like you finally found someone who actually gets you. But there's this other feeling, underneath small. Quiet, like something is slightly off. You can't name it. You can't explain it to anyone. Because from the outside, everything looks like love. That's the point. Manipulation that works never looks like manipulation. It looks like care. It looks like devotion. It looks like finally being understood. And the most dangerous part? You won't recognize it until you're already deep inside it. So let's break down the real psychology behind this. The first thing highly manipulative people do is make you feel like you've never been seen before. Not like that, not this deeply. They remember everything you say. Your childhood story, your biggest fear, that thing you mentioned once about your mother. They play it back to you perfectly. And it feels like a miracle, because most people don't listen like this. Most people are waiting to speak. But this person, they absorb you. They ask exactly the right questions. They lean in at exactly the right moment. Psychologists call this mirroring. And it's not always manipulation. But in the hands of someone calculated, it becomes something else entirely. They're not connecting with you. They're mapping you. Every value you share, they adopt. Every wound you reveal, they file away. Every dream you name, they reflect back. And slowly, without realizing it, you start feeling like this person is you, a better version of you, someone who finally understands every complicated part of you. But here's the uncomfortable truth. What feels like being deeply seen is sometimes being deeply studied, because what they're building isn't connection, it's leverage. And the closer you let them in, the more they have to work with that quiet feeling you had. That slight wrongness underneath everything warm, that was your nervous system trying to tell you something didn't add up. But by then, the map was already drawn. The second thing manipulative people do is share their pain with you, early. Intensely, strategically. This one is almost impossible to detect because vulnerability looks like trust, and trust feels like love. They tell you about their difficult childhood, the parent who wasn't there, the relationship that broke them, the trauma they've never told anyone, and you feel honored. Why would they share something so raw with me? Unless this was real, unless I was different, unless something between us was rare. But there's a difference, and psychology makes it clear, between genuine vulnerability and weaponized vulnerability. Genuine vulnerability is offered without expecting anything back. Weaponized vulnerability is a transaction. Share enough pain. Get your defenses lowered in return. Because when someone lets you see their wound, your natural human response is to lower your shield, to show yours. And now they have something that took real time and real pain for you to accumulate, handed over in the warmth of early intimacy. Researchers have a specific term for the more extreme version of this: floodlighting. When someone overwhelms you with trauma, with darkness, with raw emotional disclosure, far too fast, far too deep, before the relationship has earned that depth. And your nervous system doesn't register the violation, it registers the intimacy, because it feels the same from the inside. The manipulation here is elegant. You don't feel used. You feel trusted. You feel needed. You feel like the one person on earth who can handle their real story. And that feeling of being someone's safe harbor can become addictive. So you keep showing up, keep holding their pain, keep being the one who understands. And slowly, the relationship becomes about their wounds, always their wounds, while yours wait quietly in the corner. The third thing, and this is where psychology gets genuinely uncomfortable, manipulative people are often extraordinarily generous. At first, they give, they sacrifice, they show up, and it feels extraordinary. Because most people are distracted, unreliable, self-focused, but this person, they cancel plans for you. They go out of their way, they remember important dates, they are present in a way that feels almost cinematic. And love is supposed to feel like this, right? This attentive, this devoted. What you don't see yet is the ledger. Every act of generosity is being recorded, not consciously, not always with cold intention. But psychologists call this pathological altruism, where someone gives not to express love, but to accumulate emotional debt, so that later, in a moment of conflict or accountability, when you try to hold them responsible for something that hurt you, they have a counter-argument already built. After everything I've done for you. 4 words. And suddenly the conversation isn't about what they did. It's about what you owe. You feel guilty for having a need. You feel demanding for having a limit. You feel ungrateful for having a wound. The love was real enough to feel, but it was also a construction. And the most disorienting part is that you can love someone genuinely while also being psychologically controlled by them. Both things can be true at the same time. That's what makes this so hard to name. The fourth thing is something researchers call intermittent reinforcement. And this one changes people at a neurological level. In the beginning, they are warm, consistent, attentive, safe. And then something shifts, not dramatically, just slightly, a coolness, a distance, a day where they seem far away and you don't know why, and then they're back, warm again. present again, themselves again, and you feel relief so intense it borders on euphoria. You didn't realize how much you'd been holding until they came back. Here's the psychology. When affection arrives predictably, your brain registers it as expected, normal, background noise. But when affection arrives unpredictably, after withdrawal, after silence, after distance, your brain lights up like a jackpot. The same neurological pathways activated by gambling, by substance craving, by addiction. This isn't metaphor. This is measurable brain chemistry, the hot and cold, the push and pull, the affection and withdrawal. It doesn't feel like a pattern from inside it. It feels like weather you're constantly trying to forecast. And so you work harder. You become more agreeable, more attentive, more careful about what you say. Because somewhere in your nervous system, you've learned that the warmth, the version of them that feels like sunlight, can disappear. And you'll do almost anything to keep it. That's not weakness. That's your brain doing exactly what brains do, optimizing for connection. They just learned how to exploit that. The fifth thing is the one almost no psychology video talks about, and that's probably because it sounds like the opposite of manipulation. It looks like honesty. It's called paltering, and it's one of the most sophisticated tools in this entire playbook. Paltering is when someone uses completely true statements to create completely false impressions. They never technically lie. Every word is verifiable. And yet, your understanding of reality ends up entirely wrong. Example, you ask, "Were you talking to her last night?" They say, "I ran into her at the store last week. We barely said anything." True and meaningless, because the question was about last night, but you got a true answer about something else. And your brain, wired to trust language, fills in the rest. This is why paltering is so destabilizing. Because when the illusion eventually cracks, when you finally see the full picture, they can look you in the eye and say, "I never lied to you." And they're right. And somehow that's worse, because it means you can't even trust your own judgment about what happened. You start wondering if you asked the wrong questions, if you misunderstood, if you were looking for problems that weren't there. Psychologists call this gaslighting when it goes further. But paltering doesn't need to go further to cause damage. Technically true, deliberately misleading, and designed to keep you exactly where they want you, uncertain, dependent on their version of what's real. Here's what most psychology content won't tell you about all of this. These tactics don't exist in isolation. They build, they layer. The mirroring creates closeness. The false vulnerability deepens it. The generosity creates debt. The intermittent reinforcement creates craving. The paltering makes you doubt your own perception. And by the time all five have been operating together for months, sometimes years, you don't recognize yourself. You're more anxious than you used to be, more insecure, more uncertain about your own memory, your own needs, your own reality. You walk on eggshells without knowing when you started, and you defend them to everyone who notices. Because from outside the relationship, people can only see behavior. They can't see what it feels like. They can't see how kind this person is on the days they're kind, how the warmth, when it comes, is worth enduring everything else. That's the architecture of a trauma bond. And recent research makes something important very clear. Trauma bonds aren't just formed by circumstance. They're often deliberately engineered through precisely the kind of cycles we've been describing. The closeness and distance, the care and withdrawal, the insight and confusion. Designed, consciously or not, to make leaving feel impossible. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. So what do you do with this? If something in this video landed differently than you expected, if a specific example didn't feel abstract, if you're sitting with a name in your mind right now, that recognition matters. Name it. Not to blame yourself for not seeing it sooner. You were never supposed to see it easily. That's the entire design. But once you can see the pattern, the mirror for what it is, the vulnerability as a transaction, the generosity as a ledger, the warmth as unpredictable and therefore addictive, the truth used to deceive. Once you can name it, it loses some of its power over you. Not all of it, but some, and some is where clarity starts. The most dangerous love isn't the kind that feels bad. It's the kind that feels almost perfect. Until one day, quietly, you realize you've spent years trying to earn something you should have been given for free.